and of course with your associations here as well. I want to also just share that some of you would have participated in the Jamaica 60 Diaspora Conference, where we discussed the transformation of Jamaica through digitization. This is a massive program, cross-cutting across lots of sectors, and is another one of the areas in which we will be working more with Trinidad and Tobago, as the government here also seeks to pursue digitization as a way of expanding efficiency and economic growth. So we look forward to hearing more and, in fact, doing more in that regard. There's a lot that I could speak about, but when Prime Minister is here, I keep things quite narrow because then my job becomes more about introducing him. Although it doesn't really merit very much discussion at this point in time, but it does, I think he's worth a good introduction. What do you think? Yeah, I think so. I think so too. As you know, the Most Honorable Andrew Michael Holness is Jamaica's 9th Prime Minister and the first Prime Minister born after independence. And I think there's a particular beauty about him being here, a historic perspective of him being here for our 60th and being the first Prime Minister born after independence, because it signals the broadest potential that exists between our countries. And that is something I think we should celebrate. Prime Minister, this is your what consecutive term in Parliament? Fifth consecutive term as a Member of Parliament. You just celebrated a significant birthday, so I was trying to do some math. He's not celebrating his Diamond Jubilee yet, but it's a Jubilee still. But he has, of course, prior to becoming Prime Minister, made critical interventions in key portfolios of government: education, social welfare, community development, and of course, housing, in order to achieve his vision, and in fact, the vision that is largely shared of prosperity for all Jamaicans. Prime Minister has been building partnerships with the private sector, with civil society, and importantly, with diaspora and international partners. On the national scene, despite our many challenges, the government has achieved some of the highest levels of employment ever since independence, the highest level of employment. And Jamaica is now experiencing the fastest economic recovery in the region. New social housing programs and the expansion of PAF has been reaching more and more of our most vulnerable. And on the international scene, of course, Jamaica is a strong advocate for small island developing states and middle-income countries, and Prime Minister's view is widely respected and sought after on matters such as reforming the international financial architecture to better support development of small countries such as ours, financing for social and economic development, and certainly not least climate change, resilience, and building back better from the pandemic. I'm certain that these are just some of the areas on which Prime Minister will touch before he opens the floor for questions from you all. I want you all to just join me in warmly welcoming once more Prime Minister.
Thank you, Minister Johnson-Smith, and let me say that she is one of the hardest working, smartest Minister of Foreign Affairs any Prime Minister or President has. And I did overhear the purser on the flight on which we came recommend that I keep your High Commissioner in place, because did I tell you how beautiful you all look and how happy I am to see you here? In case I didn't, let me say, you all look very beautiful, and I'm very happy to be here with you to share what is happening in Jamaica. The purpose of my visit is ostensibly to celebrate with Trinidad and Tobago their 60th anniversary of independence, and to conduct bilateral discussions while we're here. But to give you some context, 6 years ago, the relationship between Jamaica and Trinidad was not as it was or as it is today. When we came in, there were issues with persons being turned back at the airport, issues with immigration, issues with trade, many difficult and thorny diplomatic relations, trade relations, and consular and immigration issues. And I saw Prime Minister Rowley at an event, my recollection, it was a summit of the Caribbean, I believe it was, in Cuba. And I extended to him an invitation to come to Jamaica. My thinking was that it would be good for the people of Jamaica to actually have an opportunity to interact with the Prime Minister of Trinidad and Tobago, and for the Prime Minister of Trinidad and Tobago to get a sense of what his brothers and sisters were thinking in Jamaica. And he accepted, which shows you the measure of the man, immediately without second guessing, and he came to Jamaica. It was also strategically important because at the time there was mobilization for a boycott of Trinidadian goods, and you may recall this. Now, what we discovered in having the dialogue is that many of the issues that the average person would deal with, citizen dealing with institutions, sometimes have nothing to do with current policy or leadership. Sometimes institutions work off what you could describe as legacy instructions. So they're carrying, administrative directives from an era past, and they have not been remissioned. And sometimes there are persons taking executive decisions who have no bearing or reference to a political direction. These things oftentimes happen. When Prime Minister Rowley visited Jamaica, I believe he was pleasantly surprised. The private sector put on a lovely event for him, and it was a discovery, a rediscovery of friends. Because ultimately, that's who we are as Caribbean people. We are, above all else, we have separate nationalities, separate countries, but we're friends. We share a common history. We have a common experience. The commonalities between us are far more than the differences. And once we are able to see past that, a whole entire vista of opportunities open up. And from that meeting in Jamaica, clearly it was revealed what the true potential of the relationship could be if we pursued a more enlightened path. And as a result of that, upon his return to Trinidad and a subsequent visit that I paid, we started that process of, I use the term, reimagining the relationship. And in terms of the immigration issues, certainly relative to what it was, those would have subsided significantly. And the facilitation, ease of trade has improved. I'm not here saying everything is perfect. It is still a work in progress. Hence my visit here officially to continue to build that relationship. So certainly at the leadership level, there is a significant building of trust and establishing direction, and that filters through the institutions of both countries, which would ensure that the experience that you have as citizens of Jamaica or citizens of Trinidad interfacing with the bureaucracy in either country would be a much more seamless and much more pleasing interaction. Now, having said that, I do know that there remain challenges in the relationship, and I know they will come out in questions. Some questions I will not be able to answer, not because I don't have the answer, but because I still have to respect diplomacy and moment. So there are some questions that, if you want to ask, certainly, but then I would make a pass on them, because I'm still having to treat with them within the context of the new relationship that we are building. And I'm saying that to say that the issues that you are facing, I can't say I'm aware of all of them, but most of them would have made their way to me by some means or the other. Not all through the High Commissioner. But we pay attention to what is happening with our diaspora all over the world, and people have reached out to us directly. So we understand, and what we're trying to do is work them through this process that we have established. Having said that, I just wanted to say, in case there was any concern, that Jamaica loves and continually embraces its diaspora. It is a valuable asset for Jamaica. And sometimes we hear comments being said. There was a comment recently in our local papers, and I know all of you follow local media. And so I'm going to be diplomatically assuming that all of you read those comments about the courageousness of the diaspora. So, to be clear, we love and respect and embrace our diaspora. But let me say this about Jamaica. We recently celebrated our Emancipation Day activities in Jamaica and our independence. And in preparing to give a message to the nation, I usually do my research, brief myself, and then I have to put myself in a mood to write the message to the nation. And so I was doing my research on Jamaica. And at the time of emancipation, 1834, and then that period of apprenticeship in 1838, the mainstay of our economy was sugar. We had essentially an agrarian economy. And all of that labor, which was forced, enslaved, was absorbed into the agrarian economy. At the end of the slave period, the enslaved, our forefathers, left the plantation. Some of them, not all, and went to create free villages or to strike out on their own. But just, cast your mind back to that point. The only thing that was out there was land. There was no job. There was no education to speak of. Yes, there were churches that tried to give basic education. But just imagine, from that period of time, moving 170 odd years onwards, people having no economic opportunity. But worst of all, no endowment. They didn't leave the plantation with a payment of compensation. The British compensated the planters for the loss of slave labor. But the slaves leaving the plantation got no compensation, no endowment. They got nothing with which to start life. And it's not so far away. It's not so many generations ago. My grandmother would have known her grandmother in slavery. It's not so long ago. So if you're looking to understand our current context, and I'm speaking now specifically for Jamaica, you would understand that our people had to migrate to find better opportunities. We just had to. Our agrarian economy could not absorb all the labor. And several things happened during that period of time, from emancipation to independence. One of them was the decline of sugar. So as sugar declined, it needed less labor. And then the other thing was, in 1933, we had the Great Depression. It meant that for 10 years of the Great Depression, the Jamaican economy significantly declined. How would the people of Jamaica survive? How? With no economy to absorb their labor. Well, many of them left to build the Panama Canal. Today they will say, oh, many Barbadians helped to build the Panama Canal. That's not quite accurate. The ship that took the labor to Panama came from Jamaica, stopped in Barbados for refueling and food, and then headed to the Panama Canal. Thousands of Jamaicans went there. Thousands of Jamaicans migrated to the United States when they were going through their boom after the recession in building New York and Boston and all these other places. And then after World War II, again, another major set of Jamaicans migrated. Remind me, Minister, the name of that process, the ship, the Windrush generation. Seen a moment. Windrush. And so we have always been a migratory people, precisely because our economy just could not absorb all the labor that we had. And we had a period of mass migration again in the 70s. So the concept of Jamaica could never be a geographically defined one. It just could never be, because our people have been migrating even before the emancipation, the end of slavery. Some of you may know about the story of Bookman. Bookman was a Jamaican slave in the parish of St. James. And he fled Jamaica to Haiti. He would be described as a mystic, a spiritual man. And he inspired Toussaint Louverture, who started the French Revolution. He was a part of it. The Haitian Revolution, forgive me. Again, another senior moment. I was just testing to see if you were listening. We've had Marcus Garvey, and his story is so incredible. Again, he fled Jamaica. Not fled is not the right word, but he left Jamaica. Political issues, but also economic issues. And he went to the United States and led a revolution of awareness for black people. Up until this day, people don't, give credit to Marcus Garvey, that he was the first black person to list a company on the New York Stock Exchange. Marcus Garvey, Black Carolina. It is because of Marcus Garvey why, the liberation struggle in Africa took shape. Pan-Africanism, Ghana, and all these other countries. And we have been constantly exporting talent. Miss Lou, Bob Marley, and you can name it, right? That's Jamaica. We are exporting our talent, our people. There's just something about the Jamaican society, something about our struggle that gives us a distinct place in the world. That even though our economy has not performed how we have wanted it, but there's just something in our history and our struggle and carried in our society that has made us the voice against oppression in the world, that speaks out against unfairness, that gives voice to the timid and downtrodden. It's just something about our struggles. So when the Namibians were struggling against their independence, or the Rhodesians, they were all singing the poetry of Bob Marley. In the 1970s, many Jamaicans left. In fact, you could say that a significant number of our middle class left. If you look at Cayman, for example, a large part of the Caymanian society are Jamaicans who migrated in the 70s. If you look at Miami, there is a significant diaspora. So we have had these phases of the exporting of our people into other countries and other societies. So it is not by accident that we have a diaspora that is as large as the number of Jamaicans living on the island. It's not by accident. It is a process that has been going on for, more than 100 years. And there are no other countries within this region that can claim the diaspora, except for Haiti and the Dominican Republic and Cuba, which are different circumstances. But for the English-speaking Caribbean, Jamaica has a diaspora in Colombia. If you go to San Andres, you cannot tell that you're not in Jamaica. They may not claim Jamaican paternity, but clearly Jamaicans went there. If you are along the coast of Costa Rica, there's another place, the city, Limon. In Panama, you have Jamaicans there. On the coastal areas of Honduras and Nicaragua, there's a Jamaican diaspora there. Not to mention North America and all over Europe. And it is surprising, whenever I travel, I'm able to host a diaspora meeting. I'm able to host a diaspora meeting in China, in South Korea, in Japan. Amazing, because Jamaicans are all over in significant numbers to impact the societies in which they are. And that is valuable. It's valuable not just for the remittances. It's very important. I'll speak about that, in a few minutes. But it is valuable for the paradiplomacy, which it creates, the brand that it creates, the presence that it creates, the positions of influence that you occupy, the proximity to power that you hold, and the export of the culture that you all do. It's very important for us. It gives Jamaica access and presence and visibility. Now, in the same way, when Jamaicans go overseas and do badly and create problems, the reverse is the case. But the truth is, far more Jamaicans build the brand positively than those who destroy. So that is something that we have to embrace. We have to embrace it. Because, let's face it, Jamaica is a net exporter of talent. And I said that at a certain place recently, where I was sitting opposite the Vice President of the United States. And she paused for a while, and then she laughed. Obviously, her father is a Jamaican. And look at that. Right? So, Jamaica is a net exporter of talent. Our present phase of economic difficulties will drive, a new wave of migration. And it's not just the economic issues, it's just the quality of life issues that we face, compounded by the COVID-19 pandemic. And it is not just what is happening in Jamaica, it is what is happening right across the world. So I don't know if you've been following the news that Jamaican teachers are seeking employment overseas. It's not that anything has changed, within the Jamaican landscape. It is more so that there has been significant changes in the labor market in the United States and other European countries, and they are now seeking Jamaican teachers. Of course, we have been having a problem with our nurses being pulled overseas. Now we're seeing it with our teachers. As I've said, locally in Jamaica, we could never seek to prevent people from migrating, people from taking advantage of the opportunities that they have. What we have to do as the government of Jamaica is to ensure that we are continuously improving the quality of life so that people have an option to stay in Jamaica. Now, let me say this to you. A month ago, we reported a statistic that our unemployment rate is 6%. 6% is the lowest unemployment in the history of independent Jamaica. The lowest. I believe Trinidad's unemployment would be about 4.8%. Now, if our economy continues to grow and our policies, our fiscal policies continue to bear fruit, we will have an unemployment rate equivalent to Trinidad or less. As we approach full employment, you're going to find migration slowing down. Now, I don't know if you are seeing the point I'm making. For the first time in Jamaica's history, our economy is absorbing all the labor we can get. I want you to appreciate the profundity of that point. 6 years ago, 8 years ago, we were at 13.5% unemployment. So we are on a trajectory which is happening because our economy is changing. The Jamaican economy is changing for the better. What is the profile of that change? Firstly, Jamaica has put in place measures for fiscal sustainability. No clap. But that's fine. That's fine. No, deliberately. No, that's fine. Deliberately, I'm making a point. Deliberately, I'm making a point. And you'll see the point that I'm making. The point is that these changes that are occurring are happening imperceptibly to the general public, to the general populace. They're not going to immediately appreciate these changes as beneficial to them, right? Because the effects of these changes take, years, a decade for you to see it. But without these changes, you will never get the improvement in quality of life. So one of the things that has plagued Jamaica since our independence is the lack of fiscal discipline. All right? Jamaica has borrowed to develop. A part of the borrowing is an appetite for borrowing without paying attention to the means of generating the income. So we have had that problem. Another part of our borrowing is because we live in a pathway of natural disasters and exogenous shocks. So we have had natural disasters that have upended our economic pathway for which we have to borrow to recover. And we borrow because we have had external economic shocks which have just upended all our plans. For example, oil prices increased in the 70s, or commodity price increases, or a fallout in bauxite revenues. How many of you recall those fallouts? Some of you in the room would. And those fallouts would have either eaten up revenue or taken away revenue. And how do we survive? How do we continue to pay the teachers and nurses that keep the schools open? We borrow. But some of the borrowing is as a result of our own profligacy and inefficiency. And you will recall FinSec, bad policy, which socialized a massive part of our debt. So we ended up at a point where, we had to face this reality of poor management of the economy when we had a debt of about 150% of our GDP. Today our debt is roughly about 94% of GDP, and we are on a pathway to getting that down. We're on a pathway to getting that down to about 68% of GDP, and we're quite well on that pathway. Now, we have had two major external shocks in 2 years. We have had a pandemic where we had to shut down our tourism. In fact, tourism went down to almost zero, and we had to pay out more. We had to pay, as I'm sure Trinidad did, we had to give cushioning subsidies for employment, for persons who are vulnerable. And then we had a massive oil shock, an inflationary shock in food and fuel. Now, in all of that, Jamaica did not borrow. We increased our spending limits, but we had enough buffers in our budget that we did not need to increase our debt. And I would ask anyone to tell me, when did we ever do that in response to a shock? I'm sure maybe some part in our history, but I can't remember any in recent time. So the economy has changed, and it's major. But it hasn't changed to the point where wages have adjusted and everybody is earning a big salary and everybody is able to buy a house and, improve infrastructure and quality of life is improving, that you don't feel frustrated with the current state of things to the point where you don't need to migrate or you don't want to migrate. We're not at that point as yet, but if we continue on this point of economic development, we will reach the milestone where our economy is able to deliver the quality of life and standard of living for all its citizens. And that's the objective that I have, that's the objective of the government, and I continue to work as hard as I can to bring us to that point. When we reach that point, it would be a major milestone in our history, from emancipation to independence. That is what we're working for. That's the essence of the struggle. That's the essence of the struggle, right? To build that economy. So, you know, Norman Manley said it best, that when we got our independence, he said, listen, we have achieved our political independence. Now it's time to focus on our economic independence. And that is my mantra, that's my motto, that's my focus. I'm focusing on Jamaica's economic independence. So for me, the political issues must serve our economic development. So, you know, I don't believe in the exercise of political power for political power's sake. At the end of the day, people's quality of life and ability to self-fulfill must be improved by engaging in politics. So, you know, my visit to Trinidad, of course, it has a political element to it. It does improve regional integration. It does make CARICOM stronger, and it may look good politically. But at the end of the day, it's about the economy getting stronger. It's about Jamaica and Trinidad getting stronger economically. So both our countries can do better. And we need our leaders to be thinking more like that. We need our leaders to be thinking more about the economy and getting our economy stronger. So I hope I've given you a kind of overview as to the pathway of Jamaica. You're not going to see that expressed in media, on social media, or the columnists, because the truth be told, they don't see it either. Many of them are not appreciating the direction, because unfortunately, there is a way of thinking which permeates the Caribbean narrative, which has to be carefully and slowly dismantled with the new perspective and the new facts. And that can only happen by putting forward the results. No one can argue that unemployment has moved from 13% to 6%. No one can argue that Jamaica grew by 5.7% in the last quarter. No one can argue with the fact that our debt was at 150, now it's at 94, heading to 80, heading to 68. No one can argue with those. Those are facts showing a transformation. Nobody can argue with the fiscal management of the country. But there is one obstacle that we have to overcome. And again, it is rooted in our history. And that is violence. So part of the discussion between myself and Prime Minister Rowley, because Trinidad is facing its own challenges with violence, is how do we treat with this? How do we treat with violence, right? So I suspect you would be thinking that I would be saying crime. You know, crime and violence are usually treated together. But there's just something unique about the pathology of crime in countries like Jamaica and Trinidad. And that is the predominance of violence in crime. We have to therefore, look at our societies and figure out why is it that our people, and it's not just young people, it's just through all generations, are using violence, the infliction of pain or physical force, to get compliance. Or the infliction of pain or physical force to resolve conflict. Or the infliction of pain or physical force to establish love. I've said it in these ways to kind of, give you a different perspective on it, because all I've said is the infliction of his physical pain or force in the discipline of a child. That is to try and get a result for compliance. The infliction of physical pain or force to resolve a conflict. That's what happens. Two people have an argument, one goes home for a gun and comes back and shoot the other. Conflict resolved. Or intimate partner violence. It's an intimate matter, an affair of the heart. Someone is upset, crime of passion. And why is it that we're using violence so often? Violence, the infliction of force, is, one of the leading causes of the loss of life in the region. In Jamaica, you have a higher chance of being murdered than by being hit by a car. This did not happen overnight. I mean, it's been a creeping thing, but we haven't dealt with it from an epidemiological point of view. We haven't treated it in the way that it needs to be treated, which is, it is a public health crisis. And Prime Minister Rowley has taken the same view here as well, that, it needs attention from a public health point of view. So we do have strategies to deal with violence. We are improving our national security capabilities, improving the police, and so forth. And again, those will take time. But the element which we have not really addressed is this use of violence. So we have put in place a National Commission for the Prevention of Violence. And that commission is doing several things, one of which is to examine all the disparate programs that we have on violence prevention, to bring them together in a cohesive and coordinated way. And secondly, to give us a new direction, a new perspective, new strategies on how to treat with violence. It will mean that we're going to have to spend more resources on social work, on the psychiatrists and the psychologists, particularly for young people. It means that we have to move one step further from treating with the perpetrator of crime and violence to also paying attention to the trauma of victims. And that might mean a whole new set of legislation, a whole new set of resources. The truth is that our society has become very harsh, very uncaring. In some instances, we would say, crass behavior has just taken over. And we have to address it. This generation can't just pass it on to the next because it's only going to get worse. We have to draw a line in the sand, and we have to put in place the programs to address it. So this is now my other focus of attention, treating with violence, to change the aggressive and brutal nature that is taking over behavior of some of our people. It's not going to be an overnight endeavor. It's going to take some time, but it has to start now. And a part of the discussion with myself and Prime Minister Rowley, because there are similarities and commonalities, is that we will collaborate on the efforts that we are making, certainly in terms of the sharing of research, the organization of resources, and the development of programs to ensure that we get a strong position on treating with this whole business of violence. But I would like to close my presentation to you, and thank you for being such a patient audience, in saying to you that we're also focusing on improving the conditions of housing in Jamaica. We have committed to build 70,000 new houses. The plan is laid out as to how that is going to be done, and we are executing. I've made it a point of duty that every week I'm out in the field handing over keys or breaking ground for new housing solutions, and it is having an impact. So, ladies and gentlemen, I think I'll pause there and prepare myself for your many questions.
One more time. Big applause. Okay, the Prime Minister is going to take some questions. I'm going to ask you to go to that mic. Just say your name and ask your question. And the Prime Minister will remain seated and the microphone will be moved across. Gentlemen? Stay here? You want to stay here? Okay, all right. Okay, thank you. All right. And then you afterwards.
Good evening to the Honorable Prime Minister. I must say... Yes. So that they have served well, and I just want to say congratulations to you, sir, on your stewardship. I mean, as a Jamaican who have left Jamaica 22 years ago, I must say they continue to follow in terms of progress and what has been happening in Jamaica. But there are two things that is really close to my heart. Sorry, my name is Dwight Williams. I'm the Chief Executive Officer of Hella Security. I'm going to provide security for the embassy here in Trinidad. There are two issues that I'd love to bring to your attention. It might come in the form of a question or a statement, but when I look at what is going on with the migration issue in Jamaica, I'm saying to myself, have you ever thought about re-engineering that process? Because there are a lot of us from the diaspora who would have left Jamaica and would have done well who are looking to Jamaica. Why not try to make us some offers to come back? Because we have a lot to bring back. We came here. We have enjoyed Trinidad. I would say back to Trinidad and Tobago because most of what I have now, I got here. So why not give us an opportunity, sir, to come back home? Because that's where our heart is. That is where we are. So let's do the re-engineering and create a protocol for us to come back and then to give back to Jamaica. Because that is one of the things I've been clamoring for the last 10 years or so. I mean, the last ambassador, he and I went to college together, and I pitched it to him once, but he never got around to establishing it. But we want to get back to our country. Yes, we are proud Jamaicans, and everywhere we go, we like to establish our country. The next thing, crime. That has been the biggest issue that has affected your prime ministership. We have so many professionals like myself. I'm a security practitioner. I have studied at the highest level with degrees and all of that. And I, sir, would like to give you an opportunity. There are so many of us here who want to come and create that change in Jamaica where crime is concerned. Because I remember when I was doing my first degree, my lecturer in psychology said, what you perceive is what you believe. What we need to do, Honorable Prime Minister, we need to change the perception and the mindset of Jamaicans. Because when I look at myself, poor fellow from Duncan, Trelawney, mother alone, and I made it. I came here, I mean, those who know me know that, I reached somewhere. We need now to send that message back to those in Jamaica that, hey, you don't need to take up a gun. Crime is not the answer, because we know criminality have a very short shelf life. You can think of all the dons. I mean, I have met some of the worst in my time. The JDF, they have a short shelf life. That is the message we now need to take back to Jamaica. We need now to create that avenue where we now look at successful people in Trinidad and Tobago and all over, and start to send that message to the ones who are up and coming and say, listen, there is other options other than a gun. And that is what we probably need to do. It's now to start to send that message to let them understand, listen, you don't have to go into crime, you don't have to go into criminality. You want to drive a Lexus, you don't have to go and rob somebody. You want to drive a Mercedes, you don't have to go and kill somebody. Hard work and perseverance, that's all we need. Thank you very much.
Honorable Prime Minister and your team, sister, God bless you. I think it's a fitting, I'm going to make just a comment and a charge for 60 years. So fellow citizens of Jamaica, happy 60 years. Citizens of Trinidad and Tobago, happy 60 years. Maybe we could work on something together. This is a fitting place in which to have this discussion in school. So the school is special to me. My second child came here for approximately 2 years. And as a little bastard, I took her home to Jamaica to get some Jamaica too. But she had 2 good years here. I am a practitioner in the field of psychology, and I specialize in children, teen, and young adults development. And when I say young adults, up to about 25. Because biologically, the child is still a child. In thinking, adult thinking is somewhere between 25 and 30. So have patience with you young adults. But I say this, we talk about violence, but there are things that we do as adults that's violent to the child. Some of our very systems, no disrespect to school. I'm not arguing whether it's the school's fault or the family's fault, but certainly we want to live in peace and security, and the children would like you to know this. I've interacted with Vision and Mission here with children, youngsters who are in criminality, and then Wayne Chance, God bless his soul, ex-con, who made, a significant contribution to Trinidad and Tobago in working with and understanding why crime. So violence is anything against self or others. I like when you spoke about the public health coach, but there are 3 key areas, structural areas in education that I consider violent. SEA and GSAT. There's no violence to the child. I'm telling you, seriously. There's no violence mentally for the child. Right? I'm not good enough to go to a good school. Jamaica shares that. Trinidad and Tobago shares that. Science, there's a good information now, people. Boys, science shows that boys are most ready to sit down, settle, and challenge and do well by the brain. Neuropsychology can check it out. At 16 years old, so when the At 16, he's most ready to do well. And girls and boys can do well from birth to 25. And I spoke to some prisoners in Arupa's prison, and the men there were pardoned from death row, about 20 of them. And I was there to tell them about how boys are really smart and what the brain has to say about young boys. And they asked me this: could you go back to our communities and could you tell our women? So I'm standing here to represent ex-cons from Arupa's prison. All the young people I've spoken to, and it has touched every child. The rich child who always heard you're rich, that's why you don't want to do well. The middle class child, the poor child, even worse. No matter what religion, what color, what race, the human need is to feel a sense of I am doing well and to have hope. And in 60 years, Trinidad and Tobago, Jamaica, I hear Prime Minister Motley speaking, she's speaking not too badly at all about the education. It's time to take the child from 3 to 18, or even 19, unbroken, no ability sorting, no what a good place. These are the young men and women who have an issue. God bless you. Take care.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Taborna Nelson. I always wanted to do this. Just give me a second. Sir, we went to the same high school.
Conquers all.
Alright, so firstly, congratulations on the Kingston Logistic Park, Global Cargo Transshipment and Logistic Management Initiative. Congratulations on that one. I have a question for you. In 2020, your administration launched an initiative where you guys are thinking about building more prisons. Are there any, what are the updates on that?
Well, we didn't launch an initiative to build more prisons. I mean, to be frank with you, I think any society would want to build less prisons.
Okay.
But we do need to upgrade our prisons. So we are now focusing on building specialized prisons, high security prisons,
right.
And we have identified land to build out a proper prison structure for Jamaica. So that is in the process of being developed, but I don't think we have announced it. So you have got me to say some things that are, but we haven't announced it yet.
I'll look out for the updates via the media. My next question is, sir, are there any buffers, subsidies, bursary, or scholarship aside from SBL for regional students studying here? Anything at all, sir?
I don't want to say no. I would say not that I am aware of. There are some specific subsidies which are channeled through the University of the West Indies for specific programs, certainly for law and for veterinary studies and for others. But I'm not aware of general subsidies or scholarships.
Okay.
But nevertheless, there are specific scholarships that are within government, within various ministries, that if you apply for them, they are available to study anywhere in the world. So if you apply and they meet, for example, in education, there are some specific courses, and in other areas, let's say the specific courses offered here, you could qualify.
Okay. Do you know any two by chance? Any?
No, I wouldn't be aware of, because they're dispersed all over. So. But I do take note of your interest in a scholarship.
My name is Taborna Nelson. Thank you, sir. Thank you. Oh, the last question.
Thank you,
Can I
Taborna.
take a selfie with you after? Or?
Of course, of course.
largely among the professionals and among the government, but the public is not adequately sensitized to this venture. So I think there's a need to undertake a strong promotional program that would get our consumers to have the same level of commitment to this vision. In fact, what we are promoting is that the government seek to have consumers themselves commit to this 25 by 25 by seeking to reduce their own consumption of imported food. In fact, signing an agreement with themselves to show their commitment to this. We think if that's not done, then the demand for domestic production and to get people to move away from a traditional consumption of imports is not going to be there to drive this whole vision. So that's number one. Number two, we think there's also a need for us to focus more on what we see as the need for to bring not just the individual but the household into this vision, and to get what has been developed across some of the countries in terms of household production. Where that is being advocated, we don't see a similar program being developed to support that. So for example, here in Trinidad, there has been an interest for many consumers to get involved in backyard gardening, but there is not the support for that.
Sorry, in?
For backyard.
Oh, backyard gardening.
Yeah. And I know that in the case of Jamaica, we have tried. I used to work in the ministry there, in fact. In the late 80s and 90s, we tried that. Again, there was not enough support for the program. So I think that's another area that we need to focus on. So in addition to developing the commercial aspect, particularly I see Jamaica moving very quickly to develop these agro-parks, which we believe are very good business models for other countries to adopt. We think that needs to be widened and more emphasis needs to be placed on investment in infrastructure, particularly in water management. There's no way we're going to achieve these objectives. Not that there are. If we do not invest in water management, if we produce food without soil, we cannot produce it without water. And not enough is being done in investing in that area of our business development. So we are willing in the agribusiness sector, in fact the Caribbean Agribusiness Association, including our office in Jamaica, would like to meet with your minister to lay out a program that we have developed to bring on stream the small and medium-sized farmers into this program. Under the current arrangement, we have just signed an MOU with the CPSO. We are carved out responsible for leading the charge with respect to getting our small farmers to continue to expand their production to achieve this goal. But it needs to be done in a joint venture with the government. The investment in infrastructure, in R&D, in expanding the agro-processing infrastructure in particular. Producing more food without agro-processing infrastructure will not work. So we'd like very much to have the opportunity, our officers in Jamaica would like to meet with your ministry and to lay out a plan.
I'll take your number and I will ensure that Minister Charles is in touch.
Look forward to that, Minister. And once again, congratulations.
Thank you.
from music that you yourself listen to as a child. It's interesting, it's different, and it's nice. And I also want to thank you for your communication during the pandemic. For many of us who were not able to go home, it was very terrifying, especially I have elderly parents, and I felt a sense of comfort just being able to log into the meetings and watch the communication. That gave me some sense of security in a very insecure time. So that was my comment. My second comment related to my first is that I really believe that our success lies in our culture. It really does, in terms of the things you speak about, the violence, the economic recovery, everything. I had the privilege of being taught when I first came to Trinidad and Tobago by the late Lloyd Best. And he gave us, we were able to go to Tapia House and electrify him. And he said that the Caribbean's competitive advantage is in our culture. And I thank you, Mr. Prime Minister, as a Prime Minister that has valued our culture. When I lived in France, I taught English to little children, and the first thing they said to me, when I said, I'm from Jamaica, well, I said it in French, je viens de la Jamaïque, and they're like, Jean-Paul, Jean-Paul, Jean-Paul. And I won a global essay contest in 2011, and part of the thing was to go to Japan. And when I went to present in Japan to dignitaries and everything, and we had a reception afterwards, and I was representing Jamaica because it was a global contest. And they said, Jamaica, you've seen bulls, you've seen bulls. And so I just want to encourage you to continue what you're doing in terms of promoting our culture and our people. Because for many of us, like you said, Jamaica is never far from our hearts. Living here does not mean that we don't love Jamaica. Some people make it as if you leave your country, it's you're a traitor, but it's far from it. I think at least with Jamaicans, maybe for other people, but that's not the case for Jamaicans. I believe that our people are our greatest assets, and I love what you are doing in terms of our culture and using our cultural industries. So my question is, it comes from John F. Kennedy's quote, ask not what your country can do for you, but what you can do for your country. I'm asking you, Mr. Prime Minister, what can I as a Jamaican, I may or may not return to Jamaica, I don't know, it's just the world we're living in. But no matter where I roam, Jamaica is my home. What can I, as a young Jamaican, God spare life, that has several years left, what can I as a Jamaican, living in Trinidad and Tobago, do for my country?
Jamaicans came tonight because they were afraid because of the immigration sector. That is one of the issues that I want to speak about. Persons like me that is going through the process, that have been waiting for 9 years, married and waiting 6 months, did the interviews and nothing. I have 2 kids that have student permit. The 10-year-old is unable to go to public school here because they are saying that the public school is for their nationals, and we are unable, so we have to pay for private school. My son is going to custard, so it's a bit difficult for him because I can't work and I have to depend on my husband. Well, when I did my first interview, they said that I would have gotten my work permit. Up to this day, I'm speaking to you, nothing. And when you do go in to ask them about it, you're shunned. These are matters that really don't want but need to address. Everybody may come up and say, but these are what Jamaicans out there that are crying out for help. I registered a business here. And I went during the pandemic, just to keep going so we wouldn't be put out the house with 2 kids, right? And I registered a business here online, and I went to the channel of getting some help and going to the lawyer to try to get my business up and running online, and I was turned down by Foreign Affairs saying that I'm not qualified, right? And I think that it was, my heart just deeply went down because it was everything that we tried as Jamaican here, it is going downhill, and those are the needed issues that need to be addressed more than certain things, because we Jamaicans out here is really crying for help, Mr. Prime Minister.
Good night, everyone. My name is Alvin Brown. I'm the co-founder of Jamaicans in Trinidad and Tobago, otherwise known as Jamaican TNT. It's kind of low. Right, so I must commend you on the economy. You guys have been doing really good on that. That goes without saying. It's heavy, the head that wears the crown. My major concern, is the current concern of many of us here, is crime. Currently, there was a study from Dr. Michael Coombs that stated in Jamaica that 90% of gang members come from fatherless homes. 85% of youth in prison come from fatherless homes. 70% of teenage pregnancies come from fatherless homes. So we are talking about culture, and of course there are subcultures, and a subculture that exists is the lack of men in homes and the effect that has on crime. We also mentioned the fact that there are things that we can do as Jamaicans outside of Jamaica to assist Jamaica. I'm currently working on something that that focuses on encouraging youth to be responsible. And I'd like to, if possible, to speak with you afterwards concerning that. See how we can dialogue, because we often complain about situations, but whenever we put our minds together, and I'll say this, it's not the first time I have requested to assist, not on this in particular. So please take my my open hand this time. And the next thing related to crime, the crime bill that I've heard we have been looking at, the new laws concerning, well, the new laws to affect crime. What is the process? What is happening concerning that, and when can we see changes to that? Because I'm aware of the fact that we have to put new things in place for things like importation of illegal guns. So I haven't heard anything new about that, and I'm eagerly watching certain trials as well. Don't need to call them up. So, and another thing is witness protection. There's I don't think I can necessarily go into this one because it's kind of an ongoing trial, but there is concern that witnesses of crime and persons who have been in gangs, if they give testimony, will they be protected? Because if I am a little man out there and nobody pays me any mind, if the gang member himself goes and risk his life to now speak about crime, will he be protected? Thanks.
Hi, good night, everyone. Well, this is a weird moment for me because I do like being in front of mic. I'm usually behind phone or behind organizing stuff. Mr. Williams can testify of that. My passion is literally foreign affairs, and you can test that, sir. To the point where literally I've been shadowing almost every ambassador who came, from Ms. Saunders to Mr. Prendergast, to you, sir, right? Minister, I think I messaged you sometime right after the election, and I reached out to Matthew as well, Samuda, when you won the election, and I said, okay, yes, let's organize stuff for Brand Jamaica to be on TV6, right? That was done. I got excited again when the Global Jamaica Diaspora Youth Council was launched. I said, yes, here's opportunity. Conference this year went well. I said, yes, okay, cool. Then they say, okay, you have to foot your own bill to Jamaica. Everybody know going to Jamaica from Trinidad is very expensive, right? So it's like, Lord Jesus. So then, well, yes, I actually love the virtual thing. It was very interactive, the sessions and the booths and exhibitors. Yeah, man, props for that. Excellent job. My question to you, Minister, is the fact that in the Youth Council group, there's no representation in the Caribbean. There's only US, which is headed by Mullins. Yes. And you have in UK, Tanisha. Oh yeah, well, there's a new, let me tell you, well, I can't remember a new person now. But yes. But there's no Caribbean representation. And the fact that there's so many Jamaicans within the Caribbean, and there needs to be representation on a national or on a diaspora level, not just because US, UK, Canada are large countries. There needs to be significant representation for the Caribbean diaspora here, in not just in Trinidad, but the entire Caribbean. That's my view.
Prime Minister, Minister, High Commissioner. My name is Indira Couch, as in sofa, and I am one of those unusual persons. I'm a wannabe Jamaican. Because everybody wants to be Jamaican, right? Don't?
Don't.
Yeah, in fact, when my husband and I got married in Jamaica, he asked me where I wanted to live. I said, I'm choosing Jamaica. I'm not going back to Trinidad. And hence my love for Jamaica. I say Jamaica never run me, and I chose to come back here for personal reasons a few years ago. First of all, I wanted to say, Prime Minister, that I was so inspired by, how you spoke and, and specifically what really struck me was your attention to the point about dismantling the mindset. I think that is so important. I've not heard that from any other leader in our Caribbean waters, so I want to recognize you for that, because it is. And because I believe that is really the crux of so many things. It's how we see things, because when we can change the way that we see things, because it really starts with us. When you change the way you look at things, the things you look at change. Yeah? And with that in mind, I would also just like to summarize a number of things that others have raised. But when I was in Jamaica and I was working with the IDB, there was a project I was working on. I worked with the IDB before I decided I wanted to teach people how to fish instead of giving fish. So I decided to open a business, which I ran very successfully with my husband. If you ever know of Pick a Pepper, which you do.
Yes.
Right, the mango sauces, that was our blood and sweat and tears. Which we then sold to Pick a Pepper. So now, while I was with the IDB, I did a lot of projects. And in the community, we were putting up, the funding for that time was for a community center. But when I went in with my team and we did the log frame, what the community really needed was parenting skills. Now, I've heard you speak about violence, and I've heard you speak about a number of things. What I think is really pressing, and I would love for us in Trinidad and Tobago as well, to attend to this really important issue, parenting skills. Okay, so that's my contribution. Thank you very much.
Okay, so good night, Prime Minister. My name is Michael Nelson. I'm the owner of Trinidad Home Foods, and I'm primarily responsible for feeding a lot of our diaspora here in Trinidad. Unofficially. 2 years, and we're successful. And that was in 1987 to 89. And since then, all students from COA have been able to come to Trinidad and complete their bachelorate in 2 years. By the way, I am a colleague and a friend of the chairman of your party, Bobby Montague.
Well, he also went to COA.
COA, yes. So, as I said, I'm an agriculturalist by training, and that's first. I got a little bit concerned last week when the expo was being held in Trinidad, and for a while I did not see the contingency from Jamaica, and I got real concerned. I started to call up my colleagues in Jamaica and ask what was going on. Why isn't Jamaica being represented? Well, lo and behold, after speaking to Patrick Maitland and a couple of them, we got the news release, and then we spoke to our High Commission too, and he was able to inform me that yes, we had a representative. The Minister of Agriculture was here, and I felt real good after that. As a matter of fact, he came to visit me personally at the expo, and I'm thankful for that. We had a very good conversation. So in my, outside of doing agriculture now, well, first, that was my first point. I was concerned about that, but of course that was concerned. If there's anything more that you can tell us, Mr. Prime Minister, about what are we doing in terms of this regional food security drive as regards to the 2025, whatever you can tell us tonight, I really appreciate it. Also, secondly, in regards to agriculture, I am concerned about whether we are actually preserving our best lands in Jamaica to continue agriculture while we are aggressively going after the pet project of housing. And housing is important, we need housing, but I'd like to be assured that some of our best lands are being kept for agriculture. Food security is very important. And last but not least, I want to give a little plug for CSME. I came after finishing UA, I had migrated to the United States, and I spent some time there. Then I wanted to come back to the Caribbean, and Trinidad was a part of the Caribbean. There were good opportunities here. So I came here, and through the rights of establishment, through the CSME, I set up here, and I started to do business. I started very small. I was using about 5 pounds of flour per day to convert that into patties. Today I use 1.5 tons of flour per month, 1/2 ton of chicken, and 1/2 ton of beef, and convert that into our fast food, Jamaican patties. Okay? But if one measures success, then I've been doing this for 14 years. But the real success to me is the technical service or the technical workers that I was able to bring here from Jamaica. Have them go to work, expand this diaspora, do well for themselves. That makes me proud. It makes me proud when a worker said, I have finished expanding my house. It makes me proud when a worker says, you know, my daughter passes for high school, but then 5 years later, he said, my daughter is finishing. Every year, he would make sure he secures the payment for that school, that child's school fee. That was paramount. This time of the year, they are very busy, putting together their money to send home to finish the child's education. That is what I measure my success by. Okay? So, the other thing that I want for you to be aware of being a part of the CSME program. In your host country, you are forced to be fiduciary responsible. You are forced to be financially responsible. So the government also benefits. I pay a lot of taxes here. When other businesses just go around the corner, I have to pay all the taxes. My books have to be up to date, or else I never get another renewal. So that is a sort of benefit to you as a host country, by the way. So I just want to say thank you all, and just to highlight that, but I I would be amiss if I didn't come here today and give a block for CSFE. It's a good program.
Hi, good evening, fellow Jamaicans. My name is Holness. It is a pleasure to be here to speak to you this evening. I have benefited, as most of us, from CSME, and I am very thankful for that. I am Dr. Deandra Romain, and I am a medical doctor, and I am the co-owner of Roman Medical Services. And we specialize in digital software, medical software, and I noticed that the Ministry of Health is going to embark on the health management system. And I just want to know where we are in the project, because I know that we haven't really implemented it as yet, right? I would have left in about 2018. I used to work with Sarah, and I have been in dialogue with a lot of doctors there, but I haven't seen any updates regarding that. So I just want to know where we are, and if by chance, have we given thought to the ability to reduce public debt and accountability through direct measurement of key healthcare performance metrics? Because our company specializes in medical software. However, we like our clients to actually benefit economically from it, gain revenue, right? And we have reviewed the strategic plan for the HIMS system, and we noticed that it was projected to be it's about 2018. It was projected to have about 18 million US, and we know that we can develop software that is a fraction of the cost. So we wanted to know how we would be able to speak to the Ministry of Health, to Mr. Tufton or yourself, to see how we can integrate something that would be financially beneficial to Jamaica. Because I know you spoke a lot about the economics of Jamaica, and that is where you want to embark on. That is your mantra, your manifest, right? So we wanted to assist you in that, and we'd like to be in dialogue with you further to see how we can do that. Thank you.
I noticed Minister Johnson Smith is writing, so she may get an update from Minister Tufton. But it's not something that I immediately have an answer for.
That's
so
fine.
I'll ask Minister Johnson Smith to try and send Minister Tufton a note. Maybe he can.
Okay. We'd love to speak further on the matter. Thank you very much.
Or Merle might speak with you.
Prime Minister Holness, Minister Johnson Smith, Your Excellency. Good evening, everyone. All right, Mr. Prime Minister, I'm Adrian Palmer, physiotherapist by profession, and I am also here to speak to the issue on health in terms of locally and also back home. So let me start locally here. We have a lot of Jamaicans here, some on CSME, some might have work permits. There is a policy here in Trinidad and Tobago where healthcare, especially by the public system, is mostly extended to nationals. And as locals, we could gain healthcare like for emergency, just for stabilization, or for things like maternal care, immunizations, and that's it. So we have a lot of persons here. Some might not be successful to have a big business or, or have a quote-unquote proper job. And when they become ill and they need healthcare, they don't have insurance. Medical care in Trinidad is not cheap, to be honest. They cannot receive the care. And some persons would have come here to work, so that they could send back money home to feed their families and so on. When they become ill, some have to find their way back home because they cannot access healthcare here. I am happy that you're having the conversations with Prime Minister Keith Rowley. As you discuss these issues, it's important. I know it's their policy and their country, but we have persons here, we're paying health charge, we're paying all our taxes, and I think we should benefit from the full extent of the health system here because we're living here. It can't be that we're sick and we have to be worried now how to find our way to Jamaica to receive health care. So this is something I'd want you to advocate on our behalf for. In the local context, I realize that the ministry is the Ministry of Health and Wellness. I noticed before the pandemic there was a drive for wellness, and I know that with COVID things are dimmed down a bit. But even with this, I think there's more that needs to be done. Because when I look at the figures, Jamaica has one of the highest rates for diabetes and and other non-communicable diseases. I see even where the mortality rate from CPAs, or what we call stroke, is practically double the murder rate. So it is indeed a problem. But we don't see where the Jamaican government is aggressive enough to implement policies that drive wellness. I hear the minister mentioning about getting more medication available for stroke patients. I don't think we should be focusing just on getting more medications, but we need more wellness, because in my opinion, prevention is still better than cure. Because when we look, and from an economic standpoint, the more ill and disabled people we have less people who are able to work and to become productive. So I think it's full time we start to look into policies that encourage better eating, more physical activity, and these kind of things. We're talking about it, but we are not seeing it. And those are just my two contributions.
Mr. Prime Minister, this is my wife Michelle and I. We are welcoming you to Trinidad and Tobago.
Anyway, good night. Well, he beat me to it because actually he wasn't coming up and he was too nervous, and then I come on. But good night, Prime Minister. And Visitors, I'm pretty anxious and nervous, but I just say I'm glad to be here. We are all glad to be here. My sister Alison is here as well. And I am a Trinidadian because I am married to a Jamaican. So I tell myself I'm a Trinidadian. Right? And I'm just saying that I wanted to elaborate on certain things when coming to the embassy, and my heart goes to a lot of people, not just Jamaicans, but a lot of people that come here, and it's the line and the paperwork and oh my gosh. And it really hurt my heart because when I went to Jamaica and I spent 4 months in Jamaica, a matter of fact, it's like they wanted to give me a passport right in the airport. So I was like, man, why do they make it so hard here? So I don't know if you can, you and Mr. Keith Rowley come together and only can really try and make something, because I find as Caribbean island, we shouldn't really have that unity, and we shouldn't have this set of red tape. We don't have to go through all that through America and other places. It shouldn't be like that when coming to the Caribbean islands. The next thing I would really like to talk about is when coming to crime. Crime is something that we really can't really control, and we can't really put policemen at each door when coming to such as anything else. And sometimes to say in life, you could make a child, but you cannot make them mind, right? But I just wanted to say that, one of the things that, not just for Jamaica, but for Trinidad or any Caribbean island, I find, or a matter of fact, all over the world, is that they should mandate agriculture. Be mandated. Let it be part of something growing up. Because although it's inhabited in certain areas, they should mandate it. Because since I meet my husband, we do from sales to construction, and God prepares that He put us in a place where we have to do gardening for survival. And that is one thing I admire about my husband too, because as a Jamaican, he knows to survive.
Honorable Prime Minister, I just want to say that welcome to Trinidad, sir, but I think there's a topic we're all missed tonight, although everything that we have mentioned here is vital and important. We must talk about energy, energy for the next generation. We have to talk about solar energy, wind farming. You see, this oil thing going to run out one day, And we have to put ourselves prepared from now. And I think this is a topic the whole world should be looking into. And my message will be short tonight, but it's very, very, very necessary. Thanks, everybody.
I just want to say one more thing, and please do not shoot me. But I just want to say, Prime Minister, man, is the first good-looking Prime Minister in a long time. Thank you.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, all right. Last four questions, and I'm going to ask you, please, to keep it short. I have an agreement with Sister Renee that I'll be out of here by 8 o'clock. She will give us some more time, but not too much more time. So please keep your questions short.
Good evening, Prime Minister Holness. Good evening, Mr. Smith. Good evening, Commissioner Williams. My name is Norma Isaac. I came here 39 years ago on the behest of the Trinidad and Tobago government. I was brought on here on contract to be a land surveyor, or retired land surveyor. Anyway, long story short, I got my residency in 1987. After that, I have a national ID, I have a health insurance, medical health. I presently get old age pension, NIS pension from the government of Trinidad and Tobago. Anyway, because I had a totally disabled daughter, although I had residency, I didn't pursue getting citizenship. Sorry, my head going. I didn't pursue getting citizenship, but I enjoy everything here as a citizen. I get medical, everything. I get CDAP, everything. In 2015, each year when I get my passport, they would just exchange the stamp at the airport. In 2015, when I came in, the immigration officer looked at me and said, "We're no longer doing this at the airport." And he stamped my passport. He gave me 6 months. So I had to start the process all over again. I have a friend who is an Englishman, and he had just changed his passport. Like myself, he's a resident. And so I told him about it because they were going to travel. And he came back, and they transferred the stamp at the airport, while I had to start the process all over again. Mind you, as I said, I am getting pension, I have a national ID, right? When I went in and I asked the immigration officer, why is it? Because this happened to my friend. She said, well, you know, you're Jamaicans giving us problems at the airport. The point I'm trying to make now is that there are times when we are discriminated against because we are Jamaicans, right? Because we are Jamaicans. I have had my residency from 1987 to now, right? I'm not yet a citizen. I have applied for it, and they go through the thing. You have to get letters from 3 prominent citizens. I decided, okay, I'll get a letter from the district superintendent of the Nazarene church that I attend. I got a letter from a lecturer at UWI, and I got a letter from somebody at the judiciary. And when I took it in, the immigration officer looked at me and said, hey, you will lecturer, you know people? I said, no, they know me, right? Because she could write in the letter that she has known me for 30-something years, and she knows that I have not been out of the country. The other person in judiciary, again, he said the same thing. You know big people. I said, no, they know me. He could write that he knows me for 19 years. So I empathize with that lady because I understand what's going on, right? I understand, and that needs to be addressed. When we come in from immigration, I mean, They took away my things and gave me 6 months in the country. I have property here, you know. I own the house I live in, and I also have 15 acres of land somewhere in the country. So I have property, and I won't mention the $1 million I have in the bank. Right? But so please, proper authority, because we should not be discriminated against here. Okay? Thank you very much.
Good night, everyone. Well, as I was looking here, I'm at Trinidad. Mr. Prime Minister, welcome to our country. To all Jamaicans who are here, I want to apologize for what we all go through. I have been to Jamaica and I have gotten the best treatment ever. Some of my best friends are Jamaican. Alright? So that was the test that I came to face. Mr. Prime Minister, I was telling somebody to say this on my behalf and they tell me why I go up and say it myself. So while they were talking about crime, I wrote on my status, crime and violence, personal thought. Let's change the atmosphere in our society by the music we play on a daily basis. I think it's a start. What about you? I have a suggestion. Jamaican music is one of the most popular music in the world. I have a company called JIB Media Concepts, and I publish an online magazine called Spiritual Vibes Gospel Music Magazine. And one of the top music that I know playing is gospel reggae. So my suggestion is this. You all have a sit down with all your top reggae artists and give them an incentive to at least contribute one positive song with positive message for young people. It will help with crime because in my neighborhood where I live, for the pandemic, all these young men were listening to was baka 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 baka. Bunch of garbage. But it's Jamaican music. There is the positive music, as you all know, and there is the garbage. If we can change the mindset of the people by the music we listen to, I know it will make a big difference with crime.
Mr. Prime Minister. My comment and recommendation is in response to what Ms. Indira said. Now, I'm Melissa, I'm a school social worker attached to the Ministry of Education. Now, I think that we can be more proactive as opposed to reactive by having school social workers in schools in Jamaica so that we can address some of the social issues that exist when they're young, prevent crime and violence and all the things that come with that. So it's just a recommendation. Thank you.
Honorable Prime Minister, Honorable Minister of Foreign Affairs, His Excellency, pleasant good night. My name is Hugh Swebe. I represent AJTP, Association of Jamaicans in Trinidad. Yes, well, His Excellency, correct me. The President of the Association of Jamaicans in Trinidad and Tobago, AJTP. The association was incorporated in 2019, October. You know, on behalf of AJTP, sir, we welcome you to Trinidad and Tobago. The association was incorporated and we had our role and function. Some of the roles and functions are aimed to increase awareness of Jamaicans on matters relating to legislation, Caribbean single market and economy, politics, social and economic development, both in Jamaica and in Trinidad and Tobago between both countries. Another objective, assist in improving the welfare of the diaspora by supporting the educational and development of deserving students both locally and in Jamaica. Third, to support Trinidad society through our environmental and youth assistance program. Fourth, to collaborate and support vulnerable groups within the Trinidad and Tobago community by assisting Jamaicans and other Trinidad who are facing severe economic hardship. As an association, what have we accomplished? We remember during the pandemic, a lot of university students were stranded in Trinidad. And through our efforts, and I must commend and applaud our committee members, they give selflessly, they really show support, they give up their resources and their time, and we're able to mobilize and to assist a lot of stranded Jamaicans in Trinidad. We have had a lot of cases where vulnerable Jamaicans in Trinidad in dire support, various issues. We get telephone calls, 12 o'clock in the night. We have to mobilize to assist persons who are really in dire need. You know, through our efforts, we have impacted in a positive way our Jamaican community. Our efforts, what we're trying to do is to mobilize the Jamaican our community that is here. And you know, I'm imploring most of you guys, if you're not part of HATT, please become part of our efforts. I remember you asked earlier, how can you help Jamaica? How can you support? You can support us by supporting HATT. There's a lot of needs. There's so many things we can do. You know, sir, part of your presentation, you shared where the ship was bound from Jamaica to Panama Canal, to Panama. But that voyage ended up in Barbados for supplies and fresh water. And there's a marina here also. I just stopped him and I said, that was a very rough voyage. Because imagine they were going to Panama, so they were off route. So can you imagine the murmuring and the complaint and the struggle that they encountered during that voyage? Similarly, within the society, within the diaspora community, there's a lot of challenges. But I believe if we come together as a group, there's so much things we can achieve. Someone pointed out earlier, how can we gain health care? In Trinidad, based on the policy, I believe we are entitled to primary health care if you're not a national. But secondary health care, if we come together and we form a group, we can maybe see how we can get insurance. We can explore so many different possibilities, but we have to come together, have discussions, etc. We also need support also from Jamaica, because sometimes also resources are challenged. So I'm asking also, how can the government on that level assist an organization? Additionally, also the Global Diaspora Conference also. Many persons echoed also the importance of us within the Caribbean being present. We definitely would like to be visible on those committees, etc. Those are my few comments. Thank you.
So we had about 20 questions. So immediately I'm going to ask for your pardon for those who have asked questions and those who are waiting for answers, if I am not able to answer everything in depth or specifically. And for those that are most difficult, I will turn them over to Minister Johnson-Smith. All right, so let's start with some questions I will concatenate because they are joined together in the query. So one person asked about why don't we develop a program to attract the diaspora? And then another person asked, you know, what can I do for my country? You recall those two questions. What can I do? Firstly, we don't have a specific program to say invite members of the diaspora to come back and teach, one thing that comes to mind, or to come back and give some time in nursing. But we do have a general program of persons who want to come back to Jamaica, relocate from where they were working or lived for many years. And there are some provisions for duty concessions and the like to relocate your home to Jamaica. So you can bring back your furniture, your car, and so forth. So there is that in place. Health is developing a program that would see the return of nurses who left Jamaica, migrated many years, are now working in the United States to facilitate their return to give service and then go back. So they're working on programs where nurses overseas can give back. It's still in the embryonic stages, and I will allow Minister Tufton to give more details on that. But let me say to all of you here that we want you to come back to Jamaica. We want you to give back to Jamaica. But here's what I would say to you. Until you have found the pathway to come back, some of you have 13 acres of land somewhere and $1 million in the bank account. And you may not be able to return to Jamaica. Some persons have found love here and are settled and would not be able to return. Have their family here. I'm looking at my aunt and uncle in the audience. Yes, I have family in Trinidad and Tobago. So, you know, you are still part of our family. You're still Jamaicans. You're just living elsewhere. But if you were to say to me, which you just said, tell me one thing that I can do. Right now, I would say, invest in Jamaica. And let me tell you why. Jamaica has the most liberal and transparent financial and capital market in the region. For 2 years straight, we had the best performing stock market. Trinidad stocks are cross-listing in Jamaica. We've had 2 this year, Guardian and Massey. Our stock market is growing. We don't have foreign exchange restrictions. We have a free and open market. So if you're looking for somewhere to invest, get solid returns, Jamaica is the place. The second thing I would say to you, get in on real estate. Own a piece of Jamaica. That 13 acres, try to have some in Jamaica as well. That will help the Jamaican economy. And if you just think about it, I mean, if, we have about 1.5 million or more in the diaspora, we would only need maybe 300,000 of those to make investments in Jamaica, whether it is to purchase a house or buy stocks or invest in other forms of assets. And that would create significant economic growth or provide a solid market for Jamaican goods. That will help. And that's the power of the diaspora. Right now, the power of the diaspora is in the remittances sent back home. As my friend who feeds the entire diaspora here was saying, Jamaicans, they work here, they put aside their money and they send it back. But we want to go to another step now. Instead of sending it back for consumption only, let's try and look now for investments. And I think that's a very positive way to get a stake and a say in the Jamaican economy and how the Jamaican economy evolves. Questions and suggestions were raised about GSAT, high school, parenting, and very interesting perspective that, GSAT is almost violence to the student. And for many parents and students probably felt that way. Just to bring up to date, for 2 years now, the government of Jamaica has changed from the GSAT system. What we now have is a program called PEP, the Primary Education Exit Profile. And that exam, it's not just one exam. So the pressure on the student to perform well on one exam has been removed. They're judged over, I believe it's, Minister, help me, is it 2 years? They're judged grade 4 to 6, right? So they're judged over the course of their upper primary years. And so that's a fairer exam and less pressure. It does not, the exam, it's not the problem. The problem is the lack of what is called quality spaces. So there is a high level of competition for quality spaces. The quality spaces determine your life chances. The high school you get into determines your life chance. I suspect it might be similar in Trinidad. So the issue is not the exam. You would need the exam. The exam wouldn't be necessary if there did need to be rationing. Right? The education system that we have tries to pair the brightest students with the best space, the best education. Now that may sound efficient, but it may not be equitable. All right? So what it does, it creates a dual society where some people have great opportunities and can matriculate anywhere they go and do well anywhere they go, and others continue the eternal struggle. So we are transforming the education system to improve the quality of secondary education to ensure that this terrible competition that we have for the best education space does not reinforce the social inequity in the society. That's the real issue. But the point about violence and treating with it in schools, with social workers, with psychiatrists and so forth, this is what our National Commission for the Prevention of Violence is all about. We have to build out an entirely new infrastructure that works in parallel with the security forces. So for the last 6 years of my administration, we have focused on building up the security forces. This administration has spent more money on national security than any other administration before, and I can say that without fear, favor, without contradiction. Right? We have spent what we have spent on the JCF, on the JDF, and others to build capacity. Now the focus has to shift on treating with the violence element, and that means building out an entire army of social worker responses, of having the psychologists and the psychiatrists and the people who are technically qualified to deal with the victims of violence and the trauma that violence brings. So that is something that we are solid on, and we are working definitely towards that, which will include legislation to ban the use of corporal punishment generally in the society. I want to just quickly say on the issue of climate change and environmental collapse, environmental issues are huge in Jamaica. The environmental lobby is quite active, and the government pays close attention to environmental concerns. Of course, it is not always a simple and straightforward issue because, there is a kind of historical neglect of environmental protection, and therefore industries have come up and become very mature. They provide significant employment, but there are environmental issues. And so the government is doing as best as we can, as fast as we can, to have the environmental issues resolved and properly regulate those now maturing industry. And many of them will mature to the point of, they are no longer. But until then, we have to manage that process carefully. You would be satisfied to know that we have protected the cockpit country. This is something that, decades of discussion, so we now have legislation that protects the area of the cockpit country. The cockpit country has over 40% of our freshwater supply underground, and it is a unique topography, and it has unique ecological features, and so that has been protected. We are now moving, we have also protected the Black River Morass area, another ecologically sensitive area. Some of you may know that. And today, yesterday, before I came here, I signed the cabinet submission. I believe they would have taken it in cabinet today to protect the Pedro Keys. I don't know how many of you know the Pedro Keys. So we're doing, I won't tell you that we're perfect with our environmental record, but we have done more than any other government before to bring solid legislation to protect our environment. In terms of climate change, the issues of climate change are, again, complex issues. And for a country like Jamaica, which is not a contributor to the, what we contribute to global warming is insignificant. But that doesn't mean that we should not be cognizant of our carbon footprint. And so we are doing, we are making what is called our national determined contributions to the reduction of carbon output in line with the 1.5% increase goal, 1.5% Celsius goal. Now, just to be clear on the carbon issues, there are some countries who feel that developed countries have had all the time in the world to use carbon to develop. And now they are saying to, all countries like Jamaica and Trinidad and so forth, don't use carbon. And that is a kind of, the sense of unfairness. But at the end of the day, we have to figure out what is best for the world. The truth is that sea levels are rising. There are parts of Trinidad and Tobago that are affected by unusual coastal erosion. There is the sargassum weed, which is turning up on your shores. There is the irregular rainfall, that sometimes you have a deluge and then, for a period of time, it's just drought. And we have to be enlightened citizens of the world, and we need to figure out how we're going to treat with this. The effects of it may not be in our lifetime, but be certain it will affect your children. So in Jamaica, our perspective is that we need to find a non-carbon pathway to development. So we have to use carbon fuels right now, but we have to program our economy to be less reliant on carbon. So the issues of renewables, solar and wind, we're focusing on that. So all our new capacity in energy generation will go to solar and wind. And what we have already invested in hydrocarbons, we will try to move that to LNG, natural gas, which has less impact on the environment. I want to spend just a short period of time on the consular and immigration issues. The government of Jamaica has a duty to all its citizens, wherever, to assist. And our embassies and consulates, wherever they are, and high commissions, wherever they are, generally tend to reach out. Now, just to be, we certainly would not have the budget to be able to assist every single Jamaican that is in distress somewhere, but we have a duty, once it is brought to our attention, to use our consular offices and services to assist. Now, when we are in a foreign country, as your Prime Minister, I'm saying that we have a duty to respect the laws of our host country. And I think I have to say that. We have a duty to respect the laws of our home country and to respect the politics of our host country as well. Now, once issues are raised, and especially in a forum like this and brought directly to my attention, I have a duty, an obligation to then raise them in the fora and to the persons that matter, that can make a change. And I give you my assurance that I will do so without interfering in the sovereign politics of an independent nation. But the issues that you have raised are worthy of my attention, worthy of my advocacy, worthy of support. And I will take that and bring it to the attention. As I explained to you, that sometimes it is best to have a very high-level understanding, a high relationship of trust, of mutual respect, and it gives you the opportunity to work out these very difficult issues which are happening at the administrative and bureaucratic levels. And so we'll try to make the change up here so that, as I said earlier in my presentation, when you, the individual, interface with the institutions, you have a better experience. The specific cases that you have raised, I'm going to ask the High Commissioner to take note of them so that we can pursue them specifically, but we're also pursuing the cases generally so that there can be a system-wide approach. I would refrain from speaking about healthcare and these other issues because these are sovereign issues of the host nation as to how they choose to provide healthcare. So I wouldn't make any comments about that in this forum. Questions were raised about what are we going to be doing about crime and the crime bills and so forth. The new Firearms Act will come to Parliament sometime next week and will be passed into law. It gives higher, put it this way, the sentences have been increased significantly, and it will change the risk reward for the ownership and use of illegal firearms in Jamaica. And there are several other bills that are coming before the Parliament. The idea about positive music, I totally agree and support. We have been in dialogue with many of our musicians and artists, and they tell me that they make positive music. The problem is the radio stations don't play it, and people don't buy it on Spotify and so forth. So there really needs to be a greater promotion, I would suspect, of the positive music that is being made. On the matter of the NCDs, Minister Tufton created the concept of Jamaica Moves, and he took it to the Caribbean and created Caribbean Moves. I suspect there might even be a TNT move, a TT Moves, because we recognize, and the gentleman who spoke here is so right, we can't continue to be spending all of this money on the curative side when we need to be spending on the preventative side. And that is being done. Even I fall into the laps of no exercise, and I recognize that that is not good. So I'm going to start back my exercise. But yes, we do have this program of encouraging the exercise of Jamaicans for 30 minutes, at least every day. Are there any other matters that I would have left off? I think I've covered agriculture. We commend the move, and we are also participating. Our Minister of Agriculture was here in terms of this move to have greater self-reliance and resilience for agriculture within the region. And Jamaica, of course, supports, endorses, and will participate in that. And so I think I've covered most, if not all, the topics. So I know you have to get back your hall for school tomorrow. So I want to thank you, Madam Vice Principal, for allowing us the use of the hall. And thank you so much for your patience and attention. Thank you, everyone. God bless.